Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we have 6 games here on Monday night to choose from. In this one, we're taking a look at the Heat playing host to the Hawks again after they just beat them in the same scenario just a night or two ago. Also have another game video up for you and our player prop, so want to make sure to like and subscribe to that page and follow along with us all throughout the rest of this regular season and into the postseason as we're coming back to you guys each and every weekday. Also want you guys to head to thelines.com. You can check out all the great written content we have up there for you guys as the NBA is in full swing down the stretch. We also have that odds finder tool up there for you guys. You can make sure you're getting the best juice available to you on all those bets you're making in the NBA this season. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into this 6-game slate and then talk about our game, Heat and Hawks.
A lot of back-to-backs to watch here. The other game we talk about, though, the Sixers -7 at Indy, which is on a back-to-back. Totals of 234 there. Celtics have gone from +2 at Cleveland to +6 because we really don't know who's going to play for Boston after they went to double OT. Losing to Josh's Knicks. He cannot fight back the smile. 9-0 with Josh Hart now. The Blazers -6 at Pistons. Blazers are on a back-to-back here. Hawks are +3 at Miami, as you mentioned. Totals at 229 now. Raptors +7 at Nuggets, also a 229 total. And then the Pelicans are +5.5 in Sacramento, with De'Aaron Fox questionable. Also, Jonas Valanciunas questionable, so we'll see about that one. I feel like we just did this with Miami, but except it was a home and away with Philly. They jump up and beat Philly, and then they go home and get pretty smacked. Generally, they're much, much better at home, much more reliable. I don't think reliable is a word we would use in the same sentence with the Heat at this point this season. They are extremely unpredictable in terms of both their injury reporting and then their actual play. They've lost now 6 of their last 8. They have won 9 of their last 12 at home still. I mean, Philly is not like anything to sneeze at in terms of losing to them after they beat the Bucks, this weekend. And this is really a big brother, little brother situation against the Hawks, right? I mean, they've won 3 straight against the Hawks at home. That's just regular season. They absolutely spanked the Hawks out of the playoffs last year and shut down Trae Young routinely. This is now a Quinn Snyder offense that is running way too much through Trae Young, I guess. I was trying to get ahead of him using DeJounte, and DeJounte did have a big game on Friday, a huge game, in fact, but then both Trae and DeJounte just struggled mightily against this Heat defense, scoring 109, shooting 9 for 30 from 3. Despite getting 30 free throw attempts, they only get to 109. Really bad assist-to-turnover ratio, and that's what Miami does. I mean, they muck it up. They're not going to give you easy looks. They're going to really slow it down. In those 12 home games I mentioned, the pace is 94.5. They only allow 106 a game. They only score 107 a game. Their offense is not at all impressive, and that's why 8 of 12 have gone under. 4 of their last 5 in general have gone under. This despite, adding Kevin Love to the starting lineup, which should help both their offense and the other team's offense, and it just hasn't. It is a bit of a short rest situation here with a third game in 4 nights, and maybe that makes you a little worried more even about the Heat. But for me, it's just them being home favorites. They're being favorites in general, 28-18 to the under. 21-12 to the under after a W when they start to get rolling a little bit here. And I do definitely lean towards them beating the Hawks because of what I mentioned. Like, they just have their number. And if Trae Young's not going to get going, I wouldn't expect much. And then you look at the Hawks trend, which is just not winning when they're underdogs in general. Those games also going under. But they're 4-9 their last 13 road games in conference. They jumped up with a couple road wins at Utah, Phoenix recently, showing something. But they're right back to their bullshit the last couple of years, which is just like they're not winning on the road. Like, no way, no how. You're not going to be able to trust them if they're underdogs. Maybe if they're like supposed to be the team, they will. But yeah, I would not. So we have a hard time trusting either team in this spot. But the total's up, and Josh is surprised, and that makes the under even better here.
That's what I got for you, man. We were looking at this game. It's an interesting slate. There's some back to backs. It's a little bit wonky, like we were talking about before we started recording, and that really leads me to go. I have to pick a Miami game, but I'm going under. And I like the under at 227, and I still kind of like it at 229. I would say 227 was pretty accurate. I thought that was a pretty accurate opening total there for this game. If you look at the matchup history between these two teams, especially in Miami, I think that's crucial here. And you mentioned the splits for Atlanta. Just stop me if you've heard this before this season, an NBA team that is way better at home than it is on the road this season. And that's the case with Atlanta. It's interesting. They have similar numbers if you break down their stats. They score fewer points on the road, but they're playing like a smidge faster, and they get a few more free throw attempts, which is huge for them, as we know, because that's a big part of their game is Trae Young playing a pick and roll and then getting free throws out of that for himself or other people. And they've got 3 more free throw attempts on the road. But I also look at what they do here in this situation versus Miami. In Miami, and this is just not a good place for them. It's not a good place for Trae Young, who, despite being a really solid villain on the road and having solid road stats in certain situations, not the case in Miami. And we'll talk about that in player props as well. But I mean, in his last roughly like 6 games against Miami, I'm not even talking about the playoffs, which was which was like 5 games that they got just completely blown out. Did the Hawks when they were playing in Miami, especially. But in his last 6 in the regular season, he's averaging less than 18 points a game versus them, 8 assists and a couple boards in there as well. Not really shooting well from 3, obviously, if he's only got 17 points. Making fewer than 2 a game against them. So I think that's a huge part of all this. I mean, DeJounte's come to life a bit since, the last 6 games, Quinn Snyder coming in, they come back from the All-Star break without Nate McMillan, and that's what they do. They play a little bit better once they seem to lose their coach and Trae gets that person fired, as they've done 2 seasons in a row now. But I think DeJounte coming in, playing a little bit better, does take away from Trae as well, but it hasn't necessarily led to wins for them. And the offense itself in general, while it's been a little bit better since they came back from the break, scoring 120 a game in that time frame, and still giving up about 119, playing at pretty much the same pace. I think what they like to do and what they've done a little bit better to get a few more points per game than what they were doing is things that the Heat stop as well as anybody. Points in the paint, fast break points, second chance points. The Hawks have upped their numbers in those 3 categories in the last 6 games more noticeably than any other category that they out there for them. Those aren't 3 areas that they've been solid so far this season, and that's what they've relied on to get a few more points, like I said, in their last 6 games. The problem is the second chance points, fast break points, points in the paint are all things that the Heat limit at, the rate of basically top 5 in the league throughout the season. They've been a little bit worse over the last 6, but once again, I'm focusing on them playing at home, where they also play a little bit differently than they do on the road. But at least they play better at home, play better defense. They play better overall in terms of winning. So I do like them in this situation because of that, or I like the under in this situation because of their ability to play defense at home. You can do what you want with some of the sort of back-to-backs versus the same team this season that they played. The ones versus Boston and Philly, they had a home and home, right, where they played one at home and one away, and a home and away, winning against Boston, winning against Philly on the road, losing at home, which is interesting. This is a home and home where they won most of their games. They swept the Hornets and the Wizards and the Bucks in terms of back-to-back games at home this season. And then Toronto, they won the first one and lost the second one very early in the season. This is just a scenario where I think they've got to win the Southeast. They know they've got to win the Southeast, and they want to win that. They want to make sure they get into a 6 seed right now and not have to even worry about the play-in tournament. So it's nut crunching time for the Heat, and I'm just going to believe in their ability to play defense in this type of situation before I really worry about them having to win by 3 points.
Yeah, I mean those home numbers against 2 division opponents and against the Bucks does show you that kind of raises their game to say, like, let's just show this team that we have their number, which again is what they have for Atlanta. But yeah, I mean, I guess we got to 226 on Saturday despite DeJounte and Trae shooting 5 for 27. I guess there is an opportunity to say, like, well, that's not going to happen again. But look, I don't really trust Miami to score 117 again. Like, these are 2 of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the 3-point heavy NBA, and they're also good at limiting free throws on the other end. And Clint Capella's in there. Protecting the rim. I mean, Miami can just go ice cold. Like, they had an unexpectedly good game from 3 different people on offense, which almost never happens. I mean, they have just 22 assists per game in those last 12 home games, just 10 threes. There's not a lot of firepower here to expect Atlanta to play the way they have with other teams, which, you look at their last 4 road games, all losses, by the way. They had that 138 points at Charlotte, but 108 with a 109 offensive rating in their other 3, and that includes the one at Miami. Other teams can slow them down. If another team wants to play an up and down game, sure, Atlanta will get into shootout, but they can be checked right now, and I think Miami has their number. Look, the Pacers, I guess we see Halliburton's props are up, so he is playing tonight, and that is a game changer. I mean, covered in 5 straight when he has played, won 4 of those games, gone over in 4 of those games, and stop me if you've heard this on this podcast before. The only under was against Orlando. It's something we say quite often, Orlando finding a way to go under. Look, the Pacers offense is really impressive when they have Halliburton out there, and they have these young guys around him. Last 7 with him, 125 offensive rating, 29 assists to just 10 turnovers, hitting 15 threes. You look at those last 4, just the numbers I mentioned, they're hitting 16 threes at 41%. And they've always been a good fast-breaking team. As we know, Philly is among the worst transition defenses in the league. Recently, in their last 7 road games, they've also been the 5th worst three-point defense, but they've also been the best offense. Number 1 offensive rating, their last 7 roadies here. 21st in defensive rating, not that impressive there. And scoring, as usual, the highest percentage of their points off free throws. In fact, 3% more than any other team in that span, that being the Lakers. And Indy is giving up the most made free throws per game, 5th most attempts on the season. So there's definitely something to indicate that this will look similar to how it did last season. End of season, these teams met twice in April. Both games totaled 253. That was when the Pacers were playing at a kind of an absurd pace and constantly going over, I guess. But, the 100 pace, Embiid goes for 45 and 41 on almost perfect field goal shooting in both those games. He missed their last game here in January, and it still went 129, 126 in OT at a 91 pace, which, that's the one thing you worry about with the Sixers, right? You're like, well, they have the number 1 offensive rating. Let's go. Giddy up. But they are also the slowest pace team in those last 7 road games. Mm-hmm. I can kind of break those into 2 different scenarios, though. There's like the 3 division games against the Nets, Knicks, Celtics, and then you throw the Heat in there as just like another hard-nosed team. Those were played in an 88 pace. Their last 5 road games against anybody else, mostly Western Conference teams or Milwaukee, 98 pace, and they've given up 128 per game in that pace. So there's definitely a potential for a lot higher scoring game. I also don't think they're going to be particularly geared up to play hard on both ends here, it being the front end of a road back-to-back. They're going to Minnesota right after this before they head back for 2 at home. So it's a situation where you have a young team like the Pacers. Granted, they're on a back-to-back, but they just seem to have more focus. I kind of lean towards the over, honestly, more than taking the Pacers. But if forced to pick a spread, I'm not taking Philly to cover this. Pacers have gone over on 8 of 12 back-to-backs. They're 16-11 to the over after a W. But for them, it's just like a much different rest situation. They have this game. It's a big game for them, of course. Everybody likes to stick it to Mouthy, Embiid, and Harden. And they have this game, after this game, 2 days off. Then they get Houston and Detroit twice. So it's almost like this is our Super Bowl type game, and confidence brimming after, like I said, 4 of the last 5, including a buzzer beater from Hallie yesterday to beat the Bulls.
Yeah, and it's all about what you do with Halliburton in the lineup versus what you do when he's not there. It's pretty stark. It's pretty obvious. They're 2-11 on the season now when Halliburton does not play. In those games, they score 111 points. Their 3-pointers drop from about 14.5, sometimes often 15 made threes for this team to 11. There's no way they're going to win those games. They're basically a slightly better than 500 team with Tyrese Halliburton in the lineup this season versus not. So you have to start with giving them a little bit more credit than I think we continue to do. We've seen them lose large swaths of games in a row because Halliburton wasn't playing. That's the 2 times this season that they sort of fell out of contention. They were right in the thick of things, basically as like a 5 seed, roughly like a month and a half, 2 months ago, and then Halliburton went out for 11 games in a row. They lost 10 of those, and here we are. So I think with him in those 52 games, you got to believe in the 116 points a game. Even if they're not playing at the 104 pace that they have at times this season, they're still playing at about 102, and they're scoring by shooting a lot of threes in transition and getting a ton of assists when Halliburton is in there. They're completely a representation of how he plays the game. Shoot lots of threes, play really fast, dish the ball by being quicker than your defender and getting into the lane and getting other guys open. And I think they can continue to do that against a Philly team that playing better. I like what I see as far as being able to contend right now. But the key is are they going to be able to sort of sustain what they do everywhere, and in terms of on the road and at home, and that defense on the road it's bad right now, especially in their last 5, hemorrhaging free throw attempts and 3-pointers to the tune of second most threes allowed since we've come back from the break for this team. Playing a few 3-point shooting teams in that time frame, fine, but still this is a 3-point shooting team in Indiana, and one that I think 8 points was way too much if Halliburton's playing. There might have been a little bit of discrepancy as whether or not he was, because yesterday he was questionable to play in that game that they won, like you said, on that buzzer beater. So, that said, like with Halliburton in there, also I should say that was a really good game for him because he was playing the Bulls and he was really ready to get back at Pat Bev, who popped off at the mouth for some reason because that's just what he does. But Halliburton still with that focus at this point, and then the way that they can sort of take advantage of what Philly can't do on defense as well. You get into those situations against the guards like Maxey and Harden, who, by the way, Maxey back in the starting lineup since we've come back from the break, where they were trying him out off the bench for a little bit. He's right back in there, and now also playing on that second unit as well, where you see a little bit less James Harden actually, as he's been staying in the game with Embiid more. Another area for Indy to continue to score more points when those guys aren't on the floor as well, especially when Embiid's not on the floor, hemorrhaging points in the paint for the 76ers. So Miles Turner, also a pretty good opportunity in these games to pull Embiid away from the basket. Maybe you see some PJ Tucker on him if he plays because he's questionable. But and that's probably is the matchup. But still, PJ Tucker getting a hand up on 7'1" Miles Turner is only going to do so much when he's standing at the 3-point line. So I like the opportunity for points here with the way that both these teams play and can sort of score off of the weaknesses in the other team's defense.
Yeah, you're right. PJ questionable. Tobias Harris also questionable. Solid defender as well for the Sixers. And with PJ out, the Sixers offense is going to be much better. I mean, he's not that important in this matchup defensively, but they score 119 a game in the few he's missed this year. So that's definitely a check in the right direction. This is a situation where the Sixers go over most often, 11-5 to the over as road favorites. Also over more with a rest advantage, which they have here since Indy's on a back-to-back. And Indy's defense, the last 8 games they've played, I believe somebody has gotten 60 paint points, whether it's them or the other team, and they're giving up 54 in that span. So Embiid obviously gave them the work last season. Like I said, 45 and 41 on combined 32 for 47 field goal shooting. Miles Turner, I think, was out for both those games, so they do have a little bit more resistance, but he also gave them the work in Game 4 of this season in October, and he's on a tear right now. He's got Harden feeding him. They've got Maxey off the bench. It's just a really impressive Sixers offense that as long as, we're just almost betting on the pace. As long as this pace is above 95, which the Pacers play at close to 100 at home, I think this total is pretty good at 234. Maybe you do tease it down if it goes higher, though.
Yeah, I liked it more at 231. I really liked where it opened at 231, and I can get the Pacers at +8 there as well. I think they should be able to hang around, and that's going to require offense. So with that game theory, you have to expect points at least around 234. I do start to get a little bit worried about that number, but I think this is still a good opportunity with these two games, these two teams scoring a ton of points. As long as they both come along to get into the teens here, I think we feel pretty good about it. So Nate, let's go ahead and jump into our first play a prop here. We got Mr. Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah, De'Aaron Fox might not play here tonight, which I guess could move Sabonis's props, but I think, he's not, this isn't really a pick just because Fox is out, although you look at his numbers, in 8 with Sacramento and no Fox, nearly 20 points per game, 14 rebounds per game, 6 assists. Usage rate up from up to 23% and playing a healthy 35 minutes. He is the league's leading rebounder, so that is where we start. 12.5 rebounds or to get 13 is minus 103 is the best odds I found there at Caesars. Or I want to combine that with the points, 33.5 points rebounds, where you're going to like the points more without Fox for sure. You're probably also going to like the assists more. They're going to be playing more through him. I think the rebounds hit regardless here against NOLA, which is just not a great offense. The last time these teams faced, NOLA had that kind of unexpected eruption of 136-104 win. Brandon Ingram's second game back from injury, and the Kings were just rarely not competitive there. But otherwise, they should be great at home. You look at Sabonis' last 5 at home, 21, 13 boards, 6 assists, 21% usage. The Pelicans are, Joe Val's questionable. Larry Nance is out. That's a key defender. I think a really good matchup for Sabonis there. Jose Alvarado's out, which, is not his position, but is going to affect the defensive nature in general here. Pels are giving up the 5th most points to centers their last 15 games, 5th most rebounds their last 7. And if Joe Val's out, I think the boards will be easier to come by for sure, although Willie Hernangomez is tough. He's not that same kind of huge presence. And I think Sabonis rebounds first, and then let's see if we want to attack those other props if De'Aaron Fox winds up sitting.
Yeah, I love the fact that Larry Nance is out for this. Best matchup for DeMontis. The only guy strong enough is probably Joe Val, but Nance comes close, and he's got the versatility as well. So I do like the ability for Sabonis to get some more stats in there without Fox as well, most likely. I'm going to go next with the guy who got traded for Domas there, Mr. Tyrese Halliburton on the Pacers. 19.5 points. That's minus 105 on DraftKings. Like that, you have really good odds for him to get that the 10 assists there as well. 9.5 assists is plus 115 on DraftKings. So obviously needs a double essentially there. But that, which by the way is plus 140 on DraftKings, is the double for Domas, for Halliburton. Which if he gets the 10 assists, you've got to assume he's got the double. So if you're going to put money on the assists, you might as well press it a little bit and get that 140 on the double there. But he's playing at home in 7 at home since his return from a little baby injury. 19.5, basically 20 game, 10 assists, 24% usage. And he's got splits of about 49% from the field, really good for a guard especially, and then 36.5% from deep, making just over 2 threes a game. For him to get 3 threes tonight would be a little bit better than even money as well on DraftKings if that interests you. So look, it's about Halliburton. As he goes, so go the Pacers. In the 125 offensive rating that he's had in his last 7 at home, that's the team's offensive rating as well. And versus the Sixers, playing pretty well. He's got 5 games versus them now, but 4 with Indy. And in that time frame on all 5, 22.5 a game versus this team with 5 boards and about 8.5 assists, getting 37 minutes a game, which is what you can expect him to get tonight, anywhere from 35 to 37. But really good splits in terms of his shooting numbers versus 76ers as well. 59% from the field, 48 from deep, and then 92 from the line as well. 130 individual offensive rating there. So I think, on the back-to-back, that's fine. He's healthy. We know that he's playing tonight. We're almost positive he's playing tonight. You can never be 100% sure until the ball tips off in the NBA. So definitely want to stay on that. But, assuming that he plays as everything looks like he's ready to do so, it's a pretty good opportunity in a game that we like points versus the 76ers, which we will talk about in that game video as well.
Yeah, and I was looking at his game log for back-to-back issues. He did have a really bad performance right when he came back from the injury, and I was wondering if the Pacers, when they sat him against the Spurs, if they were thinking like, oh, he can't go back-to-backs. But in general, 8 appearances on 0 days rest this season, that's actually been his most efficient appearances. Best offensive rating at 139, 23 points, 10 assists, and best from beyond the line, where he hit that buzzer beater yesterday, hitting 4 threes at 51%. And that Sixers defense, as we mentioned in the game video, struggling to stop the three-point line, struggling to stop quick guards as well. Let's get into some unders here. Nuggets hosting the Raptors, and Aaron Gordon is a guy we like and respect for sure, but is a case where the Nuggets are healthy, and now they just have so many weapons. They got both MPJ and Jamal. in their last 3, and that means Aaron Gordon is an afterthought on offense, and he's mostly asked to guard great players, or he's going to be guarding Pascal Siakam tonight. So in his last 3, just 10 points, 6 rebounds, about 4 assists. He has spiked with some assists lately. So maybe you're scared of the 23.5 PRA, which is what the under I'm talking here, but you get a little bit better odds for just points rebounds at under 20.5 there. I mean, at home, he does average more than that, but his averages are down at home versus on the road. Some of that's because the Nuggets blow people out, right? But some of it's also because Murray's more likely to play those games, MPJ, and they just don't need him as much. But only 15 points per game at home versus 19 on the road, 1 fewer rebound, offensive rating 10 points worse, usage rate 1.5% down to 20. And it's a tough matchup for power forwards. It's Toronto. They have like 8 power forwards that they will throw at you. And he actually hasn't hit this in 12 straight appearances against Toronto, 10 of them with Orlando when he was, the 1 or 2 option there, just averaging 11 a game, 6.5 rebounds and 3 assists. So I think we can take the under here, and it could hit in a variety of ways in terms of just maybe Denver runs away with it. Maybe AG just continues to focus on the defensive end and he just doesn't pile up stats.
Yeah, I've been on this with you. He had a incredible start to the season. Only really started to tail off in terms of his stats a little bit since he got hurt. Maybe like 3 weeks ago or so. Now that he's just been nagging that injury for the whole 3 weeks. Really, he's been either questionable or day to day every day since then. I know because he's on my fantasy team. So I would continue to monitor that because I that's played a huge role in this, but you combine that with MPJ and Jamal healthy at the same time, basically everything you just said there. Yeah, it's not that he's even an afterthought. It's just like, it's fine. We don't need you to be quite the same thing on offense, which is why they traded for him in the first place when they got him, was to come in, get rebounds, play defense, and that's what he's doing right now. So I think you can continue to expect that to be the priority for him, especially as Jamal's just coming up right now, averaging more than 22 a game or so in the last couple of weeks. So finish things off, as you mentioned, got a couple unders to end things here with. I like this Trae Young under. It's scary, but I like scary bets, and I like these moments to find the right spot to fade the stars. Minus 108 on FanDuel for you to take under his PRA, and I'm going all of that, points, rebounds, and assists for him, because I definitely want to get the rebounds in there, but the points and assists, they haven't really come in droves at the same time so far, and especially in the last 6 games or so, so I feel good about that. Playing Miami again, just had 8 points versus Miami, so actually that scares me a little bit more than it doesn't, because you wonder if he's going to be able to go off after getting limited to under 10 points for the first time in a very long time. In his last 6 versus Miami, though, that's what happens, dude. In Miami, especially if you look at the last 6 regular season games he's played at Miami. By the way, the playoff numbers would have helped my case here because he got shut down in the playoffs as well. But I'm just focused on the regular season numbers for him after Miami whooped Atlanta last year's playoffs first round. 17 a game, 8 assists, under 4 boards for Trae in his last 6 regular season games at Miami. It failed to cover the 37 points, rebounds, and assists in 5 of those 6 games. And Miami, why are they good at this? They're good everywhere on the floor, really, but they allow the 4th fewest points per game to point guards, and top 10 in limiting assists and rebounds to them as well. I would say that for Trae, this is just that matchup. He's failed to cover this prop in general in 4 of the 6 games since the All-Star break. You're getting a bit higher usage these days from DeJounte Murray and a few other guys now that Clint is back, and playing a lot better. John Collins also back from injury over the last week or so. So I think, the only time Trae's covered this in the last 6 games in general was against Charlotte and in OKC team that was missing SGA and a bunch of other guys. So I just don't feel like it's a good spot for him to get the 37 tonight once again against Miami.
Yeah, this is an under you've taken a lot, and for good reason. Like you said, in the playoffs, they basically took him out of the series. Kyle Lowry's going to be out, but they have plenty of guards to throw at Trae Young. It's not like he did that necessarily. It's a scheme and a coaching opportunity to do that. It's similar to when you took Embiid under first time against the Heat, and then we worried, okay, he's probably going to go over in the second matchup. He still went slightly under, though, at 27 points. I do think Trae bounces back from 8 points and gets 20 tonight, but I don't think he gets to this prop. So I think it's fine to attack it again.
And by the way, on that second back-to-back versus the Heat, Embiid didn't play, and that's why Adebayo's over hit when we took the under on that by 1. Embiid is playing tonight and should be standing there able to play a lot better post defense and pick and roll defense than maybe we've seen in the past. So that is all the time we have for you in this one, though. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along. Looking to stay wicked hot with you guys on these player props this week. So until we see you next, happy betting.